Today on What Went Wrong, we kill some kids.
Yay!
Hi, I'm Brett Mauser, and I've killed some kids. What a great way to start another.
Who hasn't?
So, for some clarification, and hopefully not getting banned from YouTube right off the bat,
We didn't actually kill
we
children
didn't actually kill children.
today.
In the film world, there's a phrase: "Oh, you got to kill some kids to get the film right," you know. And that
Duh.
it's because sometimes there's, whether it's a scene, even a line, or sometimes it's a shot or some part of your film that you just have fallen in love with, that you just love to death,
Yeah.
but it hurts the film.
Ugh.
And you have to make that hard decision. And you know, it's just a scene. It's just a shot. But that's why we call it the kids, because for a filmmaker,
Oh, I got you.
it's like having to kill your kid.
Oh, yeah.
It's so hard because I was talking to you today about Lady Lawman.
Yeah, Lady Law.
There's one shot. There's a shot of a guy that's pulling out a gun, and I do this beautiful gimbal shot that circles around him and comes in tight, comes right up in on his face, and I love that shot. But in the context of the scene, when it played all out from top to bottom, it was a 10, 15 second shot.
Yeah.
Maybe not even that long, but at least 10 seconds. To do that whole sweeping motion, and it slammed the brakes on the film. You know, and it was a cool shot.
Yeah.
And in a more tense moment, in a more suspenseful moment, it would have worked to be able to drag that out. But it was an action scene.
Yeah.
And to put that in the middle of that action scene hurt. It just slammed the film.
Yeah, you can't do a 10-second halt shot when you got something, crazy crap happening.
Yeah. And then there's the part of filmmaking where, especially when you're making an independent film, you can do things that you normally can't do on other films.
Right.
You know, if you've got a big budget. So it's easier to take a joke that you know is funny, and it's just a little something that only the crew's going to know or whatever.
Yeah.
Or there's a joke that you think is funny, but isn't very character appropriate. Or it's just not that funny, but you think it's funny, but you know that nobody else is going to think it's funny.
Right.
There's a line,
Inside jokes and stuff like that.
There's a line that I cut from Lady Lawman where Buck is talking about $5 words.
Miller, you got to stop with the $5 words. I'm going to start finding you every time you use them.
The original script had her continue and say, "Well, how much are you going to charge me? Well, how much do you think? $5." And I liked that.
Yeah.
It was cute. It's funny, but it didn't feel right. It didn't fit with the character. And as much as I liked that banter and I wanted to continue on, I had to go. Gotta go.
Yeah.
Earlier on in my film, I always put a bathroom scene in. Always put a bathroom scene in. Intentionally wrote a bathroom scene. Not a scene where it takes place in a bathroom, but I call it a bathroom scene because if you're watching a movie in a theater, I want to put a scene about halfway through that you can go to the bathroom if you need to. You're not going to miss anything. So you get this moment where, and if you go back and you watch all of my films, up until probably about Green Conspiracy, I think that's when I stopped doing it. You could see moments in the film where you're like, this scene is going nowhere. It's just two people sitting around talking for 4 or 5 minutes.
You should actually have put the little.
I always wanted to put I always thought I should put a moment where they pass a bathroom, or the guy's coming out of the bathroom, or there's a toilet in the background, or something to symbolize. Okay, go to the bathroom, everybody. Because there are times where I was watching a Star Wars movie in the theater. And I'm like, I really gotta go, but I don't want to miss anything. But if I had seen Darth Vader go into a toilet, oh wait, that's a symbol.
That's a symbol I can do.
After you make the films and you start learning and appreciating pacing and understanding those moments of the film, and that they're not necessary, and they don't push the character forward,
Right.
then you can drop them and get rid of them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of the changes took place in the script of Lady Lawman on the set while we were in the middle of production. I was cutting scenes left and right. One particular moment was when we were there was a lot more town stuff that was supposed to be in the movie, but we have to rent the town, so it was okay. when I scheduled it all out, all the town stuff was going to take 2 days. And it's like, when you know how much you have to pay for an Old West town, it's like, you know, I can cut my budget in half right here if I can get this down to 1 day.
Right.
So then you really start making those drastic decisions of killing some of those kids and
Right.
cutting some of those scenes.
Right.
Going, you know what? I love this scene. They can go. There was a scene where it was because the film is based on a newspaper article from 1891, where a newspaper reporter, talks about F.M. Miller.
Right.
So I was going to put that scene in the movie, where she and Nate were walking down the boardwalk and runs into the reporter because she sees the badge on
Right.
Miller's show, and she has and the reporter is going to have a little banter back and forth, and it was going to call to that newspaper article.
Right.
Well, the original, it was originally just a reporter, and it was just, I really want to pay homage to that.
Right.
And then it turned, and then when Nikki Young wanted, you know, it was like, I'm available to be in your Western, and I was like, let's make Maggie the reporter.
Maggie Tyler.
And we were going to call her Margaret
Margaret
Tyler,
Tyler.
and she was going to be a distant ancestor of Maggie Tyler.
That's pretty f***ed up, even for us.
And then there's a little conflict in the scheduling, and it was like, okay, well, I really love this scene. I really like this scene. It's a great
You
Ponder's
can put that
Universe kind of
after
thing.
the credits.
Yeah. It's a great Ponder's Universe scene. It really calls back to it, but it did nothing for the character.
Yeah.
And it was like, you know what? I'm okay with losing this scene. I love it. It's in my heart. I want so badly to see Maggie,
Yeah.
you know, as Margaret Tyler. You know, Nikki as
wouldn't?
Margaret Tyler, and in the Old West.
Anytime Maggie Tyler does anything, I'm
Yeah.
like, hi. You know, I love her.
But it was like, it just doesn't push the story forward.
Yeah. Titanic. I do like Titanic. Historically, you know, whatever, some stuff. But the stuff they got right, they got really right. I mean, the light fixtures were right. Creepy. But one of the even weirder things they got right, which people may or may not know, I just know just because I'm crazy about the Titanic. I know all kinds of crazy shit. There's this one scene when, I think it's when Jack and Rose are walking around or doing stuff, but you see a kid. You see a dad in his jacket and his hat, and you see a kid flinging a top, and his top goes beep, 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 across the deck. Okay, a little throwaway, nothing. Unless you've seen the pictures from Titanic, which is they had a photographer come on board, and when she left Southampton until she went to because she went from about Southampton to Cherbourg, France, which is where old Molly Brown came along, and she went back somewhere else, and then she went around the coast of Belfast, and it was at Belfast that she took off across the ocean. Well, this photographer came on board the ship and went from Southampton to Cherbourg to whatever to Belfast, and then he got off at Belfast because his whole job was to take pictures of the Titanic. One of the pictures is a man dressed just like that dude was dressed, and his little kid is flinging a top across the thing. It was like, when I saw that, once again, me being a thing, I was like, holy crap. Now, that wasn't in the theatrical. There were other things that were not in the theater release that were in the special features, whatever. The kid with the top being one of them. Some of the other scenes that went on that were from pictures that you saw. When the Titanic first left out from Belfast, she almost got in a collision with a ship next to her because she was pushing out. And this other ship was going by, and they kind of, when a large ship goes by, they create this suction, and they almost ran into each other, and they didn't talk about it. But in the other, they talk about how, you know, that almost happened. Doesn't add anything to the movie. Doesn't make the movie better for someone who isn't a total complete nerd like I am about it. There's plenty of nerdy stuff in there. The grand staircase is one of them. The clock that Mr. Andrews is fixing, because that was actually one of the last times they saw Mr. Andrews, was he had a stopwatch and was fixing the clock. It's sinking. It's done. It's sinking. Okay? It was a poignant moment. And some of them took some of these poignant moments out because they didn't fit the scene, left some other ones in. I get that sometimes you have a scene that you love. I know James Cameron loved everything he did about Titanic. You could see the care he took. I mean, the way the ship was made, the way the sets were done, and you know. So also speaking about James Cameron, The Abyss. a freakishly expensive movie, terribly technical, and all sorts of stuff that didn't make the final cut. But when you get the special features, they're all in there, right? And I'm like, oh, why wasn't that in there? Why wasn't that in there? Why wasn't that? What the are they doing? And then talking to you, oh, you got to kill the kids. I'm like, oh, because then watching the original one, you can see, okay, it was very fast paced. This little whatever was going on right here, to have this happen would have just brought the scene to a screeching halt. They needed to move it along. Ugh, I get that. I get it now. Back then, I didn't understand it. Because it's all these scenes, and I'm a super nerd about technology, super nerd about Titanic, super nerd about Dune. Okay? But if you forced me to watch a movie I didn't particularly care about anyway, and I had to watch all the extra stupid oh, f***ing hell. You know? And I know it's a hard decision to make. It has to be. Because you, being the dad, have put all this effort. That one scene with the gimbal thing and going all the way around, that was 10, 15 seconds. I know how you are about the movies you make. I know what a perfectionist you are, how you want to get the stuff right, especially as this movie progressed and you started realizing what a really good movie it is. And you got away from let's just do it to let's stop and so when you would have a 10, 15 second badass Zigabot scene come around and all of a sudden I have to cut it. It's like, I get that. It's not something I thought about, because I'm not in this world, but I'm like, oh God, yeah, that sucks. Holy I couldn't do it. I'd be making terrible movies.
Yeah. Well, it's the one of my favorite movies of all time. Dances with Wolves.
Oh yeah.
There's like a 6-hour version,
oh
a
my
4-hour
God.
version, 3-hour version. And I fell in love with that movie. It was our senior year.
We
of high
went and
school.
watched that
It
together.
was 91 and
On a Sunday.
In the theater I saw that 3 or 4, maybe 5 times in the theater.
Yeah.
And that was still a 2.5, 3-hour movie in the
It was
theater.
like 140 something,
Yeah.
100.
But to me it was also a work of art, and it was so beautiful to watch every frame.
The music was amazing. I think it was one of the first times I've ever watched a movie and been caught up in how big the movie was. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I mean, that buffalo hunt scene.
Crazy.
Real buffaloes. There
Yeah.
was no animation. There was
no CGI back then.
This is Kevin Costner riding a horse through a herding buffalo
A herd
stampede.
of buffalo stampede, chasing them around with a freaking Henry repeating rifle. It's like, what the hell? Yeah. I'd never seen a movie where I sat in amazement of the scope of it and had never thought about the scenes that went into it. But talking with you, talking about how, remember this scene, and I finally started seeing things as a scene. Seeing things as a scene. Seeing things as this was a cut, and then they moved over here, and then the camera changed, and you were talking about certain things about perspectives, like everything needs to happen on this side because if we switch it, then it's backwards. It doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, what are you talking? And I was like, oh, holy crap! And so now I see it. No, you can't do that. My friends are like, the hell are you talking about? I did the perspective. Look at it. Look the shadows. Oh my God, And they're like, who are you right now? I don't know who you are. I'm like, this son of a bitch. I can't believe this guy. Really? They paid for this crap? Thank you very much, Brett. But it was where I finally realized that a movie, I knew this, I understood this was a thing. It's like my explanation of before I moved to Detroit, I realized there was a game called hockey. I'd heard of a game called hockey. I did not realize how much it meant until when you go to a place called Hockey Town, they're not around, right? I did not realize that the concept of the cutting room floor, how much would get left behind, and what it would do to have those scenes in the movie. It just never occurred to me that there may be an entire different set of scenes with Kevin Costner and Stands with a Fist. When you're watching Dances with Wolves, I realize what's going to happen, but you don't know how it's going to happen. And so you take scenes out and it changes the feel of the movie. You put scenes in and it changes the direction the movie goes. I've never thought about that before. But the idea that, but it makes sense. But then I'd also never thought about, once I figured that out, but then I never thought about that you've made these scenes. You wrote these scenes. You wrote this dialogue. You gave it, and these actors performed it, and you filmed it. You put all this work and effort and everything into making this scene, and you like it, and it's cool, and it's awesome, and it advances the thing, and you like it. But then when it comes to the movie, it doesn't fit.
Mm-hmm. There was one of my students in their final senior film. It was about witchcraft, and the entire class was with me on this, and he had, it was about witchcraft, and there's a scene where the woman is reading a spell, and she does this spell. She has to say these lines like 3 or 4 times, and he shoots her just doing that. And then and then that would have been fine, but then he does it again with a lot more cutaways and more mysterious, and there was just so much of it. So this whole her reading the spell thing was like 6 minutes long.
Oh, wow.
When it should have been just like 2, maybe 3, not even that.
Probably a minute.
Yeah. So we recommended, hey, you've got great stuff here, of the pages flying and the candles flickering. Make it a montage.
Yeah.
You only have to have her read that spell once or twice.
Right.
And just do, dissolves and make it look like she's, if you do dissolves, it looks like she's spending the whole night saying this line over and over and over again, but it's only a minute of film.
Right.
Do that. And the whole class was agreeing, cut it down, trim it down. But he was so married to it.
Ugh.
And then there was another scene where there was a song in it that he really liked and wanted to show her, driving from her house to a mall where she sees something, her husband cheating on her or something. But from the house to there, she's listening to this piece of music. And it's just, going out the window and her tapping her thumb on the steering wheel. And it's like a minute and a half out of a short film that's 12 minutes long total or something like that. And it's just
like 8% of the movie.
Yeah, it's just her driving, and it's like, dude, this makes no sense. But I love the song. I don't care. You
gotta go.
You gotta go. And he refused. He's like, and at that, even at that time, I was like, okay, I respect your choice, your freedom to do what you want. I'm telling you how to make this better. I understand, and I even tell him stories of the things. Oh, I had this great scene that I really loved, but it really, but in hindsight, now when I watch it, I cringe every time because this is too long. The original Return to Innocence I did in 1997.
Yeah.
I had just discovered that my computer does these, does the
dissolves.
The PowerPoint. It was like PowerPoint,
Yes.
but I could kick it over to the TV. So I had like this 5-minute introduction scene of just credits.
I remember that.
And at the time I was like, this is great because I have this new technology and I can put titles on screens. And now every time it's so humiliating to watch. It's like, how could I not see that at the time that this had to go?
You can't see the forest for the trees, man.
Yeah.
There are scenes, there are movies that I watch, there's movies that you've made, and I kind of wish, even doing these things, when I'm talking about stuff, I'm like, could you please cut that down a little bit? Could you just make me talk like a minute instead of like 5? That'd be great. I'd really appreciate that. And I understand because things need to move along. Pacing has become something we've talked about. Matching... what's it called? When the scene matches where it is in the movie. It doesn't make any sense to have it somewhere else. Understanding that a montage scene isn't just for karate training. It's also for other things that go on. Like if you want to have, what's her name, making the spell and have her doing the spell, but other things are happening that dissolve, and it has to be all night. You could have the sun going up and coming down, that real quick, or the sun goes shooting across the sky and she's still talking. And there's all kinds of things you could do now that I never would have thought of that now hanging out with you I've learned about. And yeah, it's I'm not a filmmaker, but I don't need to be a football coach to know the Dallas Cowboys suck. Right? I don't need to be a football player to know they suck. I don't need to be a filmmaker to know it doesn't work. And I can see things you talk about that doesn't work. And now I know why it doesn't work. Because before I'm like, why does this suck? I don't understand. And now you're like, well, because this, that, and the thing. I was like, oh, but yeah, so I get it, and it sucks. And I don't have to do it, but I could see how hard it would be.
Yeah, it's a science and a psychology of filmmaking to an aspect. And you don't even know why, but when you're in the director's shoes, you have to understand why that is.
Yeah.
And you have to be aware that again, goes back to the original question you have to ask yourself when you're making a movie. Why am I making this movie? Are you making it for yourself? Then fine, do whatever the hell you want. But if you're trying to get butts and seats and you're trying to tell something to somebody, you're trying to express something, you want as many people to watch this and be as captivated as possible.
Right.
So you're going to have to make sacrifices, and that's what we mean by killing those kids, because it is. I don't have kids, but I can understand why. But I can kind of say that it's almost the same way.
Yeah.
You've created this thing, you've created this idea, you've created this moment in film
It's a part of
forever,
you.
and now you gotta get rid of it.
It's a part of you, and you have to cut it
Nobody's
out.
ever gonna
Oh
see
my
it.
gosh, that's awful.
So
Put it in the special features.
yeah, that's what special features are for. So it's not lost forever.
Yeah.
So you can bring those kids back and stick them on the back of a DVD, Blu-ray somewhere. But if you want a good film, you're always gonna have to kill some kids.
Ugh.